Well, this is our Self-Love Sunday, and I see there's a lot of green out there. Every Sunday we have a new color. Next week it's red. So we really participate on every level: healing, color, visuals, music. And what we're doing is changing our consciousness. That is what we truly are all about. So this morning in the self-love, unconditional self-love, we moved through attachments last week, and as we met in groups, we looked at stories we tell ourselves and the stories we're attached to. We're attached to stories, and we shared that, we looked at each other, we talked about the stories, and in the support of a group, in the support of being witnessed, because we all have these things, we were able to let go and to think of some other way to tell a story about ourselves. So today I want to talk about unconditional love, and using the book Mastery of the Self, the Toltec Guide to Empowerment, we'll look at how to gain mastery. We're going to explore the stories we tell ourselves, rewriting and retelling our story, and releasing judgments. Now, the stories we tell ourselves. In the Toltec tradition, the voice in our head, they call it the narrator. The narrator is just speaking. It can speak negative or positive thoughts, and they just are in our head constantly. This, that, the other thing. And so where we want our mastery is to be conscious of what's going on in our minds, the thoughts we have, the stories we're telling, and to gain mastery, because we know that if we keep telling the same story, we internalize the story, we believe it, and then we start living from that story. The great news, the best news that I ever encountered in religious science was change your thinking, change your life. Thinking, change your life. So that is what we're really all about, is uplifting, up-leveling our lives, changing our ideas about our health, our finances, our relationship, and moving in a way that truly empowers us to be everything that we are meant to be and everything that we want to be. So there are enough stories going around about not smart enough, tall enough, rich enough. You can fill in the blank, as Tammy talked about today. That can happen. But to hear them clearly, and I appreciated Griselda sharing this morning because she quoted all kinds of different people that are exploring different ways to make sure your mind is clear. So thank you for that, Griselda. It was beautiful. The clue that I know is when I want to hear a story, because we're busy and the stories just go on, one of the big clues is the word if. When you hear if, it should be like ding, like your phone goes off. If I was enough, if I had another life, if I had a different house, if I had another job, if I had this, if I had that. When if goes off, it's a story that's going on about not enoughness. I think the biggest part of understanding an if, when you hear it this way, if they would only do this, I'd be fine. If they'd only behave this way, if they didn't think that way, that's when the if gets bigger. And that's the place where you have to pay attention, because someone else, not only are you having a thought about yourself, but the judgment on somebody else. The if is on somebody else. So paying attention to those things, because stories come from our culture, and as we heard last week in the intimacy of the groups, that people told us things about ourselves, we accepted it, we internalized it, and now, at this point in our lives, we have the opportunity to revisit and redecide if that's the story that you want to keep. So I invite you today to join the groups this afternoon after service, because we go through this and we truly leave uplifted with a new story, if that's our intention. So, and then we collectively tell different stories, and I love the part that we're rewriting and retelling our story. Now, what brought me to religious science was when I heard the story retold about my relationship with God and who God is. I had a whole different concept. I heard a story of love. I heard a story that I wasn't going to hell, or some lady ate an apple and I was kicked out of some place. It was all too much. It was all too crazy. So I heard that story and I needed a rewrite because it didn't make sense. How does it make sense that God wants to be loved, but you're going to be punished for all eternity? I mean, it just didn't jive. So that was the beginning of the story and retelling it. But deeper than that, that's sort of the surface part, but deeper than that was telling the story that we are one with God, that God lives in each and every one of us, that there is a power inside of us. Every single one of us are here by divine appointment. You're here to be everything good, everything that you're called to be. You're here to express your light and your grace and your goodness. This is a retell. I had the story that I was a sinner, I had to repent, I had to do this, or guess where I was going for all eternity? Thank God for rewrites. Thank God for rewrites, honestly. And we're retelling the story. We're not away from the divine. We're creative beings here to express ourselves. There's a Dr. Kristen Neff of the University of Texas, and she runs a self-compassion research lab. What a job. Love it. And what she does is study our loving ourselves and our self-compassion. And she says there are 3 components to self-love. The first one is self-kindness. Self-kindness, being kind to ourselves when we suffer or feel inadequate. Not ignoring the pain, not doing a spiritual bypass, no, it's not happening. Not ignoring the pain, but not beating ourselves up with our self-talk because of what's happening. So self-kindness. Sometimes we'll talk to someone else so much kinder than we ever might talk to ourselves. So that's the first one. The second is, she talks about a common humanity. In her research, she has realized that all people suffer from inadequacy, and it's part of the shared human condition. So many times we hide our pain, we hide our issues, but we all have them. I love the groups here because I think one of the things that we do as a community, and we do well, is we share our humanity as well as our divinity. And that's a beautiful thing to do. When we understand we are divine beings and we're expressing it in a human way. And we move through things together to raise our consciousness about our divinity. Because once we understand we are the place God shows up, we are the place where love exists, that we have power within us. Actually, in each and every one of us, there's the power of our own speaking, our own intention, our own word. Tammy spoke about having an intention. When you have an intention, you have power. You'll move along the track of your intention. So that common humanity, that you're not alone. That's a big thing to know, that we're not alone in this whole thing. And with everything that's going on in the world right now, we're all in this together. And we're trying to find the tools to uplift and bring us to a new state of being. And we call it a world that works for everyone. We're raising, we're consciousness raising. That's what we do when you come to this church. You have that experience. And then the last is mindfulness. And mindfulness, she says, is taking a balanced approach to negative emotions so that feelings are neither suppressed or exaggerated. So when I got the headache, I wasn't really going to die. This is mindfulness. We either exaggerate or we underdo, but to be balanced in the middle, to have a sense that all is well. I'm going through an experience, I'm aware of it, but all is well. We can't ignore our pain and feel compassion at the same time. You just can't ignore your pain and feel compassion at the same time. The Dalai Lama said, kindness is my religion. And it's ours too. So our founder, Ernest Holmes, said, to learn how to think is to learn how to live. To learn how to think is to learn how to live. To think of ourselves as creatures of power, as expressions, emanations of God, that's who we really are. That lives in us. And because it lives in us, we're powerful beings and we're creative. And we're creating our lives personally and collectively. And that's why our work is so important. The prayers for the world are so important because they make a difference. We have intention. So I wanted to just close or talk about releasing the judgment is the last part of the story. And this is a story I'd like to share with you, and it's from India. And it's a story about a water bearer. A water bearer in India had two large pots, each hung on a piece on each end of a pole that he carried across his neck. You know that you got the picture? He has the pole with the two large pots. One of the pots has a crack in it, while the other pot was perfect and always delivered a full portion of water. At the end of the long walk from the stream to the master teacher's house, the cracked pot arrived only half full. For 2 years, this went on, with the water bearer delivering only 1.5 pots of water to the master teacher's house. Of course, the perfect pot was proud of its accomplishments, but the other pot was ashamed of its imperfection and miserable that it was only able to accomplish only half of what it was meant to do. After 2 years of what it perceived to be a bitter failure, the pot spoke to the water bearer one day while he was standing by the stream. The pot said, "I'm ashamed of myself, and I want to apologize to you." The water bearer asked, "Why? What are you ashamed of?" The pot replied, "For the past 2 years, I have only delivered half of my load. Because of this crack in my side, it caused the water to leak out all the way back to your teacher's house. Because of my flaws, you don't get full value for your efforts." The water bearer had a felt for the old cracked pot and said to him, "As we return today to the teacher's house, I want you to notice the beautiful flowers along the way." And as they went up the hill, the old pot took notice of the beautiful wild flowers on the side of the path, but still felt bad and again apologized. The water bearer then said, "Did you notice that there were flowers only on your side, not on the other? That's because I have always known about your flaw, and I took advantage of it. I planted flower seeds on your side of the path, and every day we walked back from the stream, you have watered them. For these 2 years, I have been able to pick beautiful flowers and decorate my teacher's table and bring grace and beauty to the world. Without you being just the way you are, there would have been no beauty, no flowers to grace his home." I love this story because I know we're a bunch of crackpots here. And that's why I chose the story. This is about releasing our judgments. You know, God knows everything about us and loves us unconditionally. There is nothing that any of us have to do, become more of, to be okay. The message we have is you're okay right where you are right now. You are the beloved of Spirit. This is the message we have to give ourselves. And when we truly have that message embodied in our own being, then we're able to bring it out into the world and to change what we see today. We're uplifting and understanding, yeah, everyone's a crackpot. That's just how it is. But there's flowers blooming everywhere. And I really thank each and every one of you for your participation in whichever way you do it, for planting the flowers that you don't even know are strewn along the path. And every one of us. Thank you so much.